There we go. My apologies. We are now recording the virtual presentation, so we will have that. I'll back up. I guess I've got to start sharing again my screen here. Oh, let me try that again. Thanks for everyone's patience. Back on track. So is that not showing up?
It looks good.
Okay, so it is advancing?
Yep.
Okay, great. My apologies for having to forgetting the recording to record the button. Again, this is the Responding to the Rain presentation overview with our speakers, with the Lake Friendly Living Coalition that was established last year, and where we had a week-long, and then this year we're doing a month-long, done a month-long event, and we've recorded, now we have recorded, we'll have 8 recordings that we'll do as a follow-up. So again, apologies on that little snafu. I'm glad we remembered to catch it now. So without further ado, I wanted to turn things over to Camille Marcotte, who I mentioned is the water and ecology educator for the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Onondaga County. And she's working on the Skaneateles Lake Watershed Education Program. Camille has a BS in Environmental Studies with a concentration in Environmental Communication, Culture, and Writing from SUNY ESF, and a master's in Natural Resources from the University of Vermont. She was formerly a community environmental educator with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Dutchess County, where she provided education on stormwater management, climate resiliency, land use planning, energy efficiency, waste management, and more to stakeholders throughout the Hudson Valley. So Camille, thanks for all your support and getting ready for this evening, and looking forward to hearing your talk. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Frank. Let me share my screen, you all. Let's see, are you all seeing my slides?
Looks good, Camille.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm just going to go quickly through some resources that might be of use to you all, both before and after heavy precipitation events. So obviously before the storm, we want to do a few things to make sure that we're prepared. One thing that you can do is maintain a buffer next to your lake or stream. As Frank mentioned, there's been a bunch of recordings of presentations, including presentations on rain gardens and landscaping for water quality. So I highly recommend that you check those out so that you can get some resources from those presentations on how you might do some landscaping for water quality. Another great thing you can do is keep important files in a secure waterproof location. A lot of times you'll need to provide different documents to your insurance company or other folks who might need different documents to help you get resources after a storm. So it's great if you can be prepared in advance and put those in a safe location. I mean, thankfully now we have a lot of files located in the cloud, and there's ways where we can save things online, but it's always great to have a backup in a secure location. Planning a safe evacuation route is really great to know where you're going to get out, how to get out if you need to in advance of a storm. And then keeping emergency supplies in your house is also great. So extra food that's shelf stable, water, a flashlight, first aid kit, blankets, things like that. And then making a home inventory checklist. FEMA has a resource for you to go through and do this, where you can go room by room and kind of inventory some of the more expensive items that you might want to, have documented in the event that you need to share that with your insurance company after a storm. We have a really helpful fact sheet for erosion control and things that you can do to kind of prevent erosion before a storm. So, maintaining camp roads if you have that, if you live along a stream or along the lake, just different tips that you can do. And it's meant for Skaneateles Lake, but it's definitely generalizable information that anyone could use in the Finger Lakes. But despite our best efforts, sometimes, we just have these heavy precipitation events. There's nothing we can really do about it. So how do we respond? Well, there's a bunch of different folks that you might need to reach out to depending on the issue. So if you're having culvert or road issues, depending on who owns the road, you might need to reach out to the State Department of Transportation, your county or local highway department. You might need to reach out to your local municipality or your local county to get resources from them. We have educational resources through the lake associations and Cornell Cooperative Extension. We at Cornell Cooperative Extension are tied into the New York EDEN, which is the Extension Disaster Education Network. And often they'll share a lot of great resources for how you can kind of respond to different storms and natural disasters. Your insurance company is also someone you would want to reach out to, and FEMA does have federal money available for certain disasters that have been declared. Once they meet a certain threshold of damages, they'll declare a disaster. So Tropical Storm Fred was declared a disaster, at least for, I know Onondaga, Cayuga, and Cortland counties. I'm not sure what other counties in the Finger Lakes. So FEMA can also provide support for individual property owners, just as long as it's been a declared disaster. We're putting together a resource sheet. So all of the resources that I'm mentioning today will be available and sent out to you all. So you'll have the links to everything. Locally, we have a couple resources for Skaneateles. We have the Before You Build brochure, which is great for any type of building, both new construction, rebuilding. It's a brochure put together by the city of Syracuse that shares contact information throughout the Skaneateles Lake watershed for who you need to contact and their phone numbers. And we also have a more general resource that's soil erosion permits and policies. So kind of walking you through the different permits that you might need, and also provide some best management practices as well. In the Skaneateles Lake watershed, responding to stream issues is always great to reach out to the city of Syracuse and your local soil and water conservation district. It's also great to double check the watershed rules and regulations. So we have the full list of watershed rules and regulations for Skaneateles Lake on our website, the scanlakeinfo.org, and I'll share that link as well in the resource list. So I want to highlight Onondaga Soil and Water Conservation District because soil and water conservation districts do a lot of work in responding to these heavy precipitation events. So last year in 2021, at least in the Skaneateles Lake watershed, we had kind of 3 major storm events come through on July 11th, August 17th, and October 16th. Onondaga Soil and Water Conservation District worked with the town of Spafford to help clean out some of the damaged roads and streams. Town of Spafford was really hard hit in the Skaneateles watershed. They also worked to implement sediment and erosion controls to reduce any sedimentation to Skaneateles Lake. And they helped with the permitting process for cleaning out 10 Mile Creek, Randall Gulf, and they did an emergency culvert replacement, which Frank showed some photos of earlier. So all this to say is make sure you have the right permits before you do any in-stream work, which Trendon and Robert will be talking about shortly. I just wanted to kind of show some photos. So the photo on the left is, I believe, on August 18th, so kind of the tail end of Fred. And the photo on the right is after Soil and Water did some work to kind of deal with some of the stream issues on 10 Mile Creek. And so I believe the photo on the right was taken in October after they had kind of finished a lot of their stream work. But that's all from me. And so I will turn it, I think, back over to Frank, but this is my contact information and I'm happy to share any resources one-on-one with you all. And we'll also, again, send you that resource sheet later.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Thanks, Camille. Is the screen, this is a little bit more attention to 10 Mile again. Is this showing up?
Yep, looks good.
Great. So this is a clip of a lot of this woody debris that came through. And this was actually, I think this was part of that. You had the July 11th, July 12th. There's also another storm that came through July 18th that even continued to move some things too. So it was a very wet rainy summer, to say the least. But let me, just give a sense of this clip here, where you can see a lot of trees and things that were just in the upper parts of the watershed came down through and got me thinking that, boy, wouldn't it be great to have a wood chipper around that could be kind of shared amongst the municipalities, that with a trained professional to come to these sites and help with this. After this event, I reached out to the wonderful DEC that does have some good resources and good professionals to provide that information. And here, who thought that there'd be a best management practices on woody debris removal. So all the resources Camille mentioned, the link to this website, we will be sharing with all the participants from this session, and as part of a recap of the different presentations. We'll be developing, finishing up a resource guide that goes along with this presentation to share. So anytime we mention a resource, we'll make sure to keep that as part of that document. But this just gives a nice overview of, sometimes you leave the woody debris, and sometimes it causes a major issue. And when you're in doubt, reach out to your local soil and water, your permitting folks, if you're trying to figure out whether you need a permit to get in or not, or your DEC rep. So this is just more from that website. And this is a good general guideline. And really talks about, if you're, pulling stuff from above the banks, that tends to be okay. If you have to get heavy machinery into the channel, or it says, if you're below the top of the banks, it would require a permit. But I'm not the professional to talk about that. And that's why we invited Trendon and Rob. So Trendon Cho is an environmental analyst for Region 7 Syracuse office, and covers Onondaga County on a broad range of environmental projects. His position includes conducting environmental impact assessment of proposed actions, interdisciplinary environmental and regulatory reviews, and interacting with government agencies and the public on environmental review and permitting procedures. Trendon graduated with a degree in wildlife science from SUNY ESF and has worked in the New York State DEC's Division of Environmental Permits for the last 7 years. Also joining us is Robert Call. Rob is the Deputy Regional Permit Administrator for Region 8 and oversees the natural resource permitting for an 11-county area, including Seneca, Ontario, and Yates counties. Rob graduated with a degree in geological sciences from the University of Buffalo and has worked in the New York State DEC's Division of Environmental Permits for the last 7 years as well. Rob and Trendon, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time this evening and service to our state and the Finger Lakes region. I think we've got all the Finger Lakes covered between the two of you guys. And so if anything, this is a great introduction for the folks online, getting to meet the folks that are behind the permitting and getting some advice from both of you. So thanks again. I'll stop sharing, and I think Trendon, you'll have a presentation to share as well. Thanks so much.
Yep. All right, give me just 2 seconds while I try to share my screen.
Great. Looks good, Trendon.
Okay. So first, apologize.
Oh, wait a second. Is that it? Oh, there it is. Great. All set.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. First, apologize for not having video. I'm up in the Adirondacks, so you'll just have to picture me with about 10 black fly bites on my face and neck, scratching constantly. But yeah, as Frank said, I work with Region 7 DEC office in Syracuse. For those that don't know Frank personally, just know that he is an advocate for those on Skaneateles Lake. He and I work hand in hand on several projects trying to improve, the quality within the Skaneateles watershed. So just know that he's an advocate in your corner. So and a great person to work for. So yeah, so getting back to DEC and flood response. So I think I can speak for both Rob and I when I say that this is somewhat a very difficult part of our job. And you may ask, why is that? Well, you know, most of our job is trying to balance the what people would like to do when impacting natural resources. And as part of our jobs, we have to balance both the impact to the natural resource as well as what people would like to do. And when it comes to flood response, people with camps that have been in their families for generations, they're flooding, and they just want some relief. And you know, we really have to look at those impacts to see if what they're looking to relieve is going to have a benefit to the environment as a whole, a negative impact, or whether this is a short or long-term relief in the long run. So I figured it'd be a good to go over our regulations and talk about what we do and what is within our purview. So I guess we could start with what we regulate with regards to, you know, lakes and streams. So under the Environmental Conservation Law, the ECL, there's 3 articles particularly that deal with lakes and streams. So Article 15, protection of waters, is normally what we look at when you are going to have excavation or fill or have a disturbance to a stream, or when we're talking about boathouses, docks, moorings, that sort of stuff. Article 24 deals specifically with freshwater wetlands. There's not many on Skaneateles Lake. There's some freshwater wetlands on the southern tip of Skaneateles Lake, but most freshwater lakes do not have freshwater wetlands. 401 water quality certification, that comes from federal permitting. And Article 34, we just wanted to quickly touch on Article 34. It's mostly up on Lake Ontario. And most of these that we're talking about today are Finger Lakes. So Article 34 doesn't pertain. So when we get a call, our first step is to determine if the project is in fact an emergency and whether we need to drop everything we're doing to issue an emergency permit, or, you know, supply an applicant with an application to kind of go through the normal application process. So I won't go through it word for word, but basically the first sentence kind of deals specifically with how we determine whether it's an emergency or not. So does it have an immediate threat to life, health, property, general welfare? And or can the project wait under normal circumstances, and can we kind of go through the normal permit process? So if we decide an emergency whether a project is actually an emergency, the 5 items below are required. So description of the proposed action. I want to dredge 50 feet of the channel, 6 inches down, and leave 12 inches of natural stream bed. A location map, just go on Google Maps, draw a circle around your property, and print that as a PDF. Reason why the situation is emergency. Well, the bank is eroding and my foundation is in risk of deteriorating. Actions to be taken to minimize environmental impacts. I'm going to put up some sandbags to alleviate any sediment from getting into the stream and into the lake. So if you're on a AA stream in Skaneateles, let's use that for example, I'm going to put some sandbags up while I excavate out this bank, place some riprap so that the sediment from the excavated material does not end up in Skaneateles Lake. And any additional information, photos are extremely helpful. So again, the immediate threat to life, health, general welfare, property, or natural resource. The one caveat that we bring up to applicants is that an emergency permit can only be authorized for 30 days. And let's just be realistic. When there is an emergency, again, I'll keep using Skaneateles Lake because Frank and I work hand in hand on that lake. You know, let's just use Brillo excavation. When there's an emergency, Brillo cannot be at 10 cabins or 10 cottages at one time. You know, he has resources, he could be at maybe 2, but sometimes getting a contractor out to your property could take months. So if we issue an emergency authorization and it can only be issued for 30 days and you can't have a contractor out there for several months, it may not be in the best interest for you to get an emergency authorization. It may be best for you to go through the individual permitting process. You know, and we have general permits. We could issue those, and general permits, once they're signed by our central office folks, they're good for 10 years. So we could issue those for, you know, a year or 2 for you to get the project done. So just keep that in mind when you're seeking an emergency authorization. So just wanted to quickly go over some examples of emergency permitting, because some folks, you know, view an emergency in different ways than we do. So Rob, I believe this is in Region 8, but this is, you know, bluffs on possibly Lake Ontario. Obviously, the person's foundation is in risk of houses in risk of falling down the bluff. So clearly that's an emergency. You know, there was a storm that actually the storm water from the top of the bank started to push blocks down and the entire embankment fell into the stream. So those are just, you know, some quick examples of emergencies. Some examples of non-emergencies, you know, a break wall falling into the water. There's no risk of life or property. So that would, you know, kind of go under the normal permitting process. You know, just a break wall falling in, kind of cracking in. Not really an emergency, something that can go through the normal permitting process. So individual permit, kind of what we're getting at. When you want to replace your break wall, when your shoreline is eroding, you want to place some riprap to alleviate, you know, future erosion. Dredging in front of your lakefront or stream. You know, a lot of people have shallow lake beds at the edge of their shoreline, and they want to dredge the material so that you know, families can swim, they can get the boat into the dock properly if it's not deep enough. Those are the types of things where we would issue an individual permit. Frank, can you hear me? I'm just getting a connecting on Zoom message.
We can hear you. I think you need to be about 1 slide forward, but.
Okay. For some reason I'm getting a connecting Zoom pop-up on my screen.
I think we just lost your slide presentation.
Do we lose it? Okay. Trend, what I can see if I can pull up your slide deck, or do you want to retry again?
Yeah, let me just retry. Sorry about that.
No problem. And if that doesn't work, I've got your slide deck I can pull up on this end. Okay, it looks like it's up again, but I think you may have muted yourself too, Trendon.
Can you hear me, Frank and
I
Rob?
can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, great.
All
Sorry about
good,
that.
thank you.
Again, I'm in the Adirondacks, so I apologize. Service is shoddy out here. So, just wanted to kind of go over quick involved agencies. So, normally DEC goes reviews projects hand in hand with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We both regulate basically the same type of projects. So normally you will be working with DEC and Army Corps. When you will only be working with DEC is when projects fall under what they call nationwide permits. I won't get into that because that's federal regulations and I'll let them handle that. But basically, small projects, dredging, placing riprap along your bank, replacement of an in-kind wall, that stuff falls under their nationwide permits. Department of State, Office of General Services, and then specifically for Skaneateles, Village and Town of Skaneateles now regulate navigational law. So if you are replacing a dock or mooring, or doing anything along the shoreline, you do have to go through both the codes department, local codes, and DEC. So again, Article 15 is excavation fill, docks and mooring, and then our permitting under federal 401 water quality certification. So excavation fill, what does that mean? So I'm sure some of you have heard the term mean high water level. It's basically the average high water, which again, Skaneateles Lake has a regulated elevation on Skaneateles Lake. If you are going to excavate or fill at or below that elevation, you do require a permit from DEC. So when we are reviewing permits, they do have to meet what we call permit issuance standards. These are regulations in the environmental conservation law. There's not a lot of wiggle room. There is some vagaries within the regulations, but they do have to meet permit issuance standards. So we kind of go over these 4 bullet points to see if they meet our standards for issuance of a permit. If they do not, that's when you would receive a notice of incomplete application, basically requesting additional information or responding to some comments that we have. You can't put your wall 5 feet out. You have to bring it back to the existing footprint, some of those things. It's very black and white, some of the regs. Again, I'll just kind of really brush over Article 24. This is just a small picture of Skaneateles Lake, the southern tip, if you're impacting wetlands, or the 100-foot adjacent area, which is basically if you see that wetland on the map on the slide, if you draw a 100-foot circle around the entire wetland, that's the adjacent area. We regulate both the wetland and the 100-foot adjacent area. And any impacts to that would require a permit from DEC. Again, coastal erosion hazard area, that's Article 34, Lake Ontario, and some embayments along that Lake Ontario watershed. I believe most of the people on this call are from the Finger Lakes, so we'll kind of just glaze over that. And that's just a quick slide. I figured there would be Q&A after, so we just wanted to quickly go over our regs. And this is our contact information. And just some quick takeaways, just like Frank said, coordinate with DEC as soon as possible. When there's an emergency, we have 24 hours to respond to that emergency, whether we are going to issue an emergency authorization. We have to be in contact with you within 24 hours if you contact us about a true emergency. And most of our day, and I think I speak for both Rob and I, is just answering questions, and that's fine. People don't understand our regs. It's taken Rob and I, and we're still figuring out after 7 years. But our regulations are somewhat confusing, and they're confusing to us. We have weekly internal calls in our office trying to get on the same page as everybody else. So, you know, most of our time is spent answering questions to the public, you know, kind of educating people. And, you know, we try to help out the best we can, but, you know, we don't want, we would rather issue you a permit than a violation at the end of the day. It's one negative thing about our job is having to issue violations. So I don't know, Rob, did you have anything else to add?
I just wanted to sort of reiterate, I just advise people to reach out as quickly as possible, depending on which lake you are on. I'm in Region 8, which is basically the west side of Cayuga Lake westward. So if you're calling with regards to like Canandaigua Lake or Seneca Lake, give Region 8 a phone call. And we pretty much always have someone manning the phones in the permits office, and we'd be happy to help to sort of shepherd you through that process. I find a lot of people are sort of very confused and they don't know what to do when their property has an emergency. So our staff is fairly well trained to sort of try to calm people down a little bit, and then try to encourage them to come up with a game plan to actually propose something that is both feasible and that sort of meets the regulations. One of the challenges with emergency permits is it also needs to be sort of the minimum necessary to resolve the emergency itself. So if hypothetically a house is being threatened by an encroaching stream, the resulting sort of emergency authorization is only to sort of immediately address the risks to the house. So there sometimes can be a little bit of a conflict with regards to if it's sort of a house issue, we potentially let people protect or maybe armor a small portion of that stream near the house, but not necessarily 200 or 300 feet of the stream that may be downstream of the house. So it has to be the minimum needed to address the emergency itself. Very frequently, yeah, we have that conversation. What's the minimum necessary? And if that can't be met, we encourage them to sort of work through one of our general permits or sort of an individual permit to get them what they need to do what needs to be done. And I'm got a place on Cayuga Lake myself, and was sort of tossing sandbags around last October during the flooding event. So we recognize the issues that are out there, and we're here to help. But that's pretty much all I need to say.
Great, thanks, Trendon. Thanks, Rob. We are gonna shift over to do some questions and answers or Q&A. But before we do that, is this slide showing up now? Are you seeing that?
So,
Yeah,
yes.
I see it.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I did want to just note, and I meant to do this a little bit earlier, but that we'll share this in our resource guide, but the Lake Friendly Living Coalition resides on the Finger Lakes Regional Watershed Alliance webpage. And if you go to that, each of these respective lakes have, and I think growing, have either Lake Friendly Living, Lake Friendly Land Care, Lake Friendly Lawn Care, different pledges that you can take if you're in these one of these watersheds of these lakes. It's an honor system saying, you know, there's different pledges that say different things. They're all very similar, but it's to say that you're going to do your best to care for the watershed, not use extra fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides to care for our lake. And then when you go to the website, you can click on these different icons and it'll take you to those Lake Friendly Living pages with those respective lake associations. And that's where we'll be updating our information. As I said, you can sign the pledge. That's one of the reasons why we all got together, was to see if we can get more people doing this. Some programs will then, if you sign the pledge, you can also click with our program, and I think others too, to receive a sign that you can put out to show your support for the lake and hopefully build a social expectation to care for our lake around the community and that sense of pride. So check that out, and wanted to just thank, since this is again the last presentation of the month for this Watershed Resiliency Awareness Month through the coalition, wanted to thank all the organizers, speakers, site hosts, participants, and sponsors, namely the Finger Lakes Regional Watershed Alliance and our other fiscal supporters like the Nature Conservancy. So thanks again to everybody that's been involved with this. And then I think we'll just get going with Q&A. Again, if you see this little icon on your computer, or when you click more on your smart device, you should see this on your screen somewhere to ask your questions. And we'll be monitoring that. But at this point, while we wait to see if any questions come in, I'll fire one out there too. Why don't I stop sharing so we can maybe get everybody on screen a little bit too. And I guess my question is for Trenda and Rob. I know might not be any examples yet on Skaneateles Lake related to maintenance permitting, but in terms of, are there any examples in the Finger Lakes or other places in New York State that maintenance permitting is kind of used, where if you have a predetermined plan that's communicated to you that allows folks to just stick to that plan and keep maintaining that stream course? And that, I think in some examples I'm thinking of, could be working with like a municipality or such, but I know things aren't as settled for some examples, but are there some settled examples that you'd be able to share as a strategy for helping our lakes?
Yeah. So Frank, we used to have, DEC used to have MOUs, memorandums of understanding, with soil and waters and some municipalities. And it was kind of before my time, but what I here happened was it basically was the Wild West. And you better than anybody knows that the municipalities, the highway superintendents, they have to they have to get voted in every 2 to 4 years, and there's a lot of changeover. So usually those type of permits were issued for 10 years. And we saw, DEC saw, a vast difference of environmentally friendly staff that were willing to do the right thing. The 10-mile point is a little bit different because we have Jody, who's, the highway guy out there, and he is extremely environmentally friendly. He is well educated. He continues to be educated and wants to know the right things to do. So in that particular instance, our comfort level is a little higher. And, I am currently working with our technical staff to try to get somewhat of a maintenance permit on that, because, that highway staff's out there every year, twice a year, sometimes, in a really bad year, 3 times a year, cleaning gravel out of that stream channel. So I think that's our some of our hesitance is that again, there's a vast variety of education and willingness to follow our regulations. So I think that's why there's usually not those type of permits available. Rob, do you have any examples in your region?
There's limited examples. I know sort of on the north end of Hemlock Lake, there is some maintenance dredging that occurs for some of the City of Rochester water intakes, but it's fairly limited. Just frankly, we try to encourage people not to routinely dig out streams or bulldoze through streams just because of the potential risk to the ecosystem. And our overall sort of reasonable and necessary standard, which is within our Article 15 permits. The great question is it necessary to do a clean out as often as some municipalities desire? But so there is a reluctance, and we try to sort of balance both protection of sort of the property as well as the natural resources in the streams.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Trendon. And I did want to note too, the Trendon earlier mentioned for Skaneateles Lake folks who are on the call related to this navigation law, where New York State provided that ability for the town and village of Skaneateles. There is right now it's proposed draft language that they're hosting a public hearing on related to that law on June 6th. So we'll get that info out to local folks around the watershed here too, if you want to attend that public hearing or learn more. It is up on the town of Skaneateles' website currently and possibly linked through the scanlakeinfo.org, I think. So, and then Camille, I'll ask a question. If we're still waiting for other questions, I'll ask another one. Can you just give another synopsis, kind of who all the different, when a storm happens, all the different folks to call or who the different players are? I know one thing I'll mention that's helpful is to know whether, I would imagine most folks know if they're on a private road, that there may be some things where you might not be, knocking on the door of the State Department of Transportation to work on an issue. But if you know you're on a state road, a county road, a municipal road, that does help with knowing where to call and relevant to your issues too. But yeah, Camille, I just wanted to, in a sense, and then the soil water conservation districts, I think have a pretty, I don't know if it's apples to apples of what we've got the Skaneateles Lake Watershed Agricultural Program. But and I know that gives jurisdiction throughout the whole Skaneateles Lake watershed. And I know that Soil and Water's helped kind of working with the local folks and triaging with the DEC and Department of Transportation too. So to think about them in the role. But Camille, did you want to add anything? Just kind of all the different folks. I know you had the slide, but in terms of, let's say this really a bad storm happens, who are the ones we could be calling? And then the other part of the message is, it's not always a knight coming in on a white horse to save the day. Sometimes we have to look at what we can do and knowing what we're allowed to do, and that's kind of where Trendon and Rob are available to help discern whether you need a permit or not, but to help see if we can empower the community on these issues. If there are major rain events, we have got our contact us on our website. If anything, we're there taking photos and being a voice for the community and showing up on site, and then making sure different folks know about the issue too. So we can be a conduit at the Skaneateles Lake Association to help share information and get it to the folks that should be helping respond, or get some advice on how to do things on your own where you're allowed. Anything else to add, Camille, on that, or Trendon or Rob?
I would just say that definitely reaching out to folks is helpful. Obviously I'm at Cornell Cooperative Extension, not going to go out and do any of this work myself, but if I know it's a problem, I can share that with the city of Syracuse and Soil and Water, the DEC. We can reach out, and that's really how we determine where some of the problem areas are in the watershed. And, I know our Onondaga County Soil and Water Conservation District has gone out and, received funding to do projects on like Shotwell Brook and other problem areas in the watershed, so that hopefully in the future, these events won't be quite as bad.
Yeah, and one thing we'll try and, well, that might get complicated, at least for Skaneateles Lake folks, but maybe other lakes. It might be good to have in the future to think about where folks could send, and whether it's social media or a specific email, where you can send photos or small video clips, and so we can archive that. So when we're building a case for support for the lakes as an entirety, when there's different federal or state opportunities, it sometimes helps to have those images to show the issues. but at least, or even to share the story of how things have hopefully could be improved, seeing how the before and afters too. So that's something I might, we'll look to see. We've had some examples of what we have for an email and places to send these locally here, but that's something to maybe discuss Finger Lakes wide too. I don't know if we're getting a lot of questions. We do have the Q&A.
Frank, is there an
chat.
opportunity to unmute people or no? Because some people may not be able to Q&A.
we could. I think if you hit the raise hand, if someone just wants to ask their question through audio, I think we can do that too. You should see a raise hand option, and then if that pops up, we can let you ask a question.
Yeah, Frank, just to touch back on the town and the village of Skaneateles.
Yeah.
So just the quick cliff notes is, again, you have to come to both of us, codes, planning board, codes / planning board and DEC. The village and the town did ask the state, and the governor signed into law that they are now included and are able to regulate navigational law. So it just means that there's another purview of regulation under proposals there in the Skaneateles watershed.
Yeah, that's a really important clarification. So that's so they can have a little bit more stringent than what's already existing in New York, right?
Yeah. And Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but Onondaga Lake also has the same regulations. They've had it for years. But basically, they take on OGS, Office of General Services regs, and DEC's Article 15 regs, and then either are more stringent or, just able to review projects in concert with DEC.
Thanks, Trendon. So I'd not seen a lot of questions come in, so I'll consider that maybe we covered quite a bit comprehensively. And I will please expect from us a resource guide, and we'll include a link of where or an email where you can ask more questions. And we'll make sure those questions get to the right folks if you have any follow-up from this event this evening. Again, thank you so much, Camille. Thank you very much, Trendon and Robert. Appreciate your time and support and helping with this. And hopefully this is not the new norm of these high intense rain events, and that last year was a bit of an anomaly and we'll have a bit of a break. But if this is an upward rising trend that we are going to have these more intense rain events, I think we're going to need a lot more of a coordinated approach through our communities on how to respond well to these disasters. So we're on board to do what we can. So thanks everyone again, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful evening, and happy June to everyone starting the day tomorrow. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Frank.
Take care.
Thanks, Frank. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.